How you guys doing?
And welcome to What the VOW. Guys, we're so excited. We've been talking about this for a minute. And we shared this with you guys, I believe, a few weeks ago on the podcast that we will be sharing this project with you guys because it's something that God really laid on our hearts. And yeah, so What the VOW?
Yeah.
What the VOW came about while we were having just a really tough time in our marriage, trying to figure out like, okay, so like this marriage thing is like real life, like we're really doing this thing. And being that we had such a long courtship or dating, what is it? Yeah, we just dated for a while. I think that the marriage was always something that we looked forward to. And so the wedding vows itself just wasn't really something that we considered as something important to look into until we got into the marriage and we're like, wait, these vows that we made, every day we're living them out. Yeah. And the first time we were even exposed to it was
during the dress rehearsal.
Yeah.
The night before.
Yeah, and the pastor just kind of like, so I'm going to say this, and then y'all say, I do. And then I'm going to say this, and you're going to give them the ring. And And we're just kind of like, okay, yeah, just nodding our heads.
No, absolutely. And if I could put it into some perspective, in life, anytime we enter something and we don't know what it is we're going into and what it entails in terms of the responsibility it calls for, we're signing up for a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, and for failure.
Right, and these vows, to only be introduced to them the night before and to not have been, taken through a process of having them broken down, like this is what this means, this is what this looks like.
Right.
Like this is the cost and the responsibility associated with this beautiful thing we call marriage, right, which is oftentimes glamorized.
Right, and romanticized.
Right. But this is the responsibility that's also associated with it. To miss out on that preparation is...
And then think about it. As soon as a couple says, oh, they want to get a divorce, or oh, they're going through tough times, they'll be like, oh, remember the vows you made? Remember the... And it's like, I don't even remember them because I only repeated after the pastor. Like, how is it supposed to stick in my head when there was never a study on it, or there was never a teaching on it or anything? So... how is it supposed to stick? So we want to give you guys what we wish we had. And hopefully it'll help all you guys out there that are dating, single, engaged, thinking about
marriage season.
Yeah.
So it's wedding season right now.
I know. We got like 5 weddings this summer. Yes. So yeah. Okay. You want to get into it?
Yeah, let's jump right in. And so first and foremost, we want to give ourselves a historical context of what we're talking about here. And talking about wedding vows in particular, let's go into a little backstory. So the first actual recording of a wedding vow was found back in 1549 in a document called a Book of Prayer. And this was used, again, back then by an Archbishop of Canterbury and some others, but he started this. This was used for different church services, one of them obviously being a wedding or a wedding ceremony.
Right.
And so that's when it's first recorded. Now, how it came about, obviously there's some arguments about that from different scholars. And so there isn't necessarily a reasoning behind how it was compiled, but obviously we can see the traces of scripture, right, in some of the words, and that's one of the things that we're going to get into today.
Yeah. Because I think sometimes the assumption is that, oh, wedding vows, so it all came, like, it's literally word for word straight out the Bible, which isn't the case. Right. An archbishop created it. Yeah. Well, did he do it by himself? Did he, like, we don't even know.
Like the actual compilation,
you can't. It was so hard to figure out, like, where did this thing come from exactly?
And that was like humbling for me, because here I am repeating something I don't know the history of. I mean, it sounds good.
Yeah, it does.
Right.
It does.
But I never asked that question, like, who wrote this? Why am I saying this? Why these words?
Yeah.
Why these particular
Right. Why
commitments
not other words?
versus anything else? And I think there's nothing wrong with it.
Right,
That's
right.
not what we're arguing, but
they're beautiful.
having that moment to reflect and ask yourself, what is it that you're committing to, and whom is the mind behind this thing that you're using as the contract? I think it's an important question for us to ask, and we're going to dive into that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, in general, wedding vows actually differ a bit.
Yeah.
Depending on the religion, right? So,
and depending on the denomination.
That is very true.
Right.
Even within different denominations. So, for example, the Catholic in the Catholic Church, if you're having a wedding, this is a general wedding vow that they had, which is I blank, put your name, take you, whoever he or she is, for my lawful wedded wife or husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do us part. I will love and honor you for all the days of my life. Boom. And then the Presbyterian, you can take it.
Yeah, so I take you to be my wife, and I do promise and covenant before God and these witnesses to be your loving and faithful husband, in plenty and in want, in joy and in sorrow, in sickness and in health, as long as we both shall live. So that's the Presbyterian one.
Yeah. And then non-denominational, I now take you to be my wedded wife or husband, to live together after God's ordinance in the holy relationship of marriage. I promise to love you, comfort you, honor you, and keep you, and forsaking all others, I will be yours as long as we both shall live.
Right. And then this last one that we're going to share is from the Quaker tradition, and this one is actually one of my favorites. Me and Ella, we talked about this.
Yeah.
And it reads, in the presence of God and these our friends, I take thee to be my wife, promising with divine assistance to be unto thee a loving and faithful husband, so as long as we both shall live.
Yeah. So that's like the shortest one. So why do you like that one?
Well, not just because it's short, but I think it's short, simple, and gets right into it in terms of the fact that, hey, we're about to walk into something in the presence of God, and people are making this commitment. So it just paints that picture very clear.
Yeah.
The next thing it does is it calls for divine assistance to maintain the commitment. And I think that clearly stated for all to know, especially the two parties that are coming together, is essential. Because what we're walking into when we're walking into marriage is something that is beyond our own capacity within ourselves. Because the love that is needed and the sacrifice that is
selflessness,
right, all of that is required for a successful, healthy, and achieving marriage and union, one that truly reflects what God desires for it too. That's going to be beyond us.
It's unnatural.
Exactly. It's going to require divine intervention. And I love the fact that it just says that clearly, right? It doesn't make it a subliminal message. It says, hey, with divine assistance, I vow to do this. And if divine assistance ain't there, then it's not something I can do on my own. I love that about it. Yeah.
And I also want to point out, so even me just saying like it's unnatural, and it's, pointing out the fact that like with this particular vow, they said that they are promising this with divine assistance.
Right.
Just in looking at the vows themselves, we just realized that like you're making this vow to each other, and you're saying for better or for worse, but you have no idea what better or worse is about to come. Like you don't know, for sicker or in health, whatever. Like you don't know, you have no idea. But
like it's one thing to be shown a movie script of the entirety of the journey, and then make the commitment.
Yeah.
But when you don't know, you're saying for better, for worse, for richer, for poor, not having any clue.
Yeah, in sickness and in health.
How poor it's gonna get. God forbid.
And some people don't like to say that. Yeah, they like to say for richer or richer, but You don't know. But yeah, so just looking at just how much it is sacrificial every single day.
Yeah.
Our human nature is selfish. Our human nature desires the things that are best for us. And yes, we may have moments of selflessness. We may have seasons and times of selflessness. But what makes marriage hard, and what makes these vows hard to live by, is the fact that when you are before each other, and you're like, your wedding day hopefully is a day where you look your absolute best, right? And then the whole entire time dating and courting, it was all leading up to this moment, right?
So you putting your best foot forward.
Yeah, like you're the happiest.
Right.
You're the hopefully, you're just full of so much joy. So as you're saying these values, you're like, yes, I'll do it. Like, some people, they don't even say I do. They just say absolutely, certainly, yes, let's go. Like, like people are usually very hyped when they're responding to these vows and when they're reciting these vows. But then the day-to-day comes and the celebration is over, and now life happens, and family and friends, and just so many different things that goes on all around you that you don't realize. It really does impact your marriage, and you begin to realize just how selfless you have to be to really take these vows seriously and to honor these vows. And what makes it even more serious is the fact that it's not just between you and I, but it's also you and I and God. That's it.
Huge. And so at this time, as we continue this history lesson, we want to go into how things have evolved. Right. So how the traditional wedding vows from back in 1549 has evolved to now become the kind of universal traditional wedding vow that it is. And so we'll read some of the original ones and show you what has changed.
Okay. So you'll say the groom and I'll say the bride.
Sure. Let's do it. Okay. So I, David, take thee to be my wedded wife.
Thee who?
Thee, Ella, to be my wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to worship, till death do us part, according to God's holy ordinance, and thereto I plight thee my troth.
So let's focus on this first before we go into the bride.
So we'll zoom in.
Because I never knew that the original groom's vow was that they would love and worship their wife till death,
so,
takes us out.
Surprise, the word that changes is worship. We don't hear that anymore.
Yeah.
So that's something that in the evolution of the wedding vows, they removed.
I just wonder why they took it out.
Yeah.
It sounds crazy though now.
Right.
But like I'm assuming that the heart behind it was a positive thing.
I'm sure. And I think you're right, and I think you're hitting on the reason perhaps why it was taken out. That it sounds crazy. In our day, that word has this added weight to it that seems to be reserved solely for God himself. Right. And so to attribute that word to anyone else is like idolatry.
Right.
And so that's the immediate kind of response you get when you hear it. Like imagine going into a wedding, you heard that, you're like, oh,
worship.
That was a little strong there. And I think
he's so whipped.
Exactly.
He's so dumb.
Like, wait till you see the comments on that video that night, right? But I think the heart behind the original intent of using that word is to really, like, as best as possible with the English language in this case, to describe the level of selflessness, the depth of adoration that you would be assigning to this other person, specifically from the groom to the wife, right? The level of love, the level of reverence and respect, right? To hold her on such a high pedestal. And the fact that it had to be added means it's not a natural thing to do. That's why you're making the commitment to do it.
Right.
Because chances are your natural instinct would be to go completely the opposite direction, disrespect her, sometimes abuse her, right? Again, thinking about what these authors were trying to not do. I'm thinking they're using that word to really stress that, hey, this is someone who is now yours to care for, to love, to adore, to uphold, to value, and do all these things. And I don't think they could find a better word than worship in that time. And what does that look like plainly?
Right.
Right? You know, for me, I think in some capacity, there is worship that happens from me to you. Right?
Yes,
and obviously worship after God
idolatry?
himself. No, not idolatry, but worship after God himself. I think after him, you're the most important person in the world. Not even I think, I know. You're the most. Woo! Caught myself there. But you're the most important person in the world, even before me, right? And so, in a way, that to hold you that highly is worship. To adore you, to behold and make an intentional effort to see the beauty in you, to see the good in you, right? To see all those wonderful attributes that made me make this commitment in the first place.
Right.
Even when circumstances may not always depict them. Right? So even when I'm on timeout, even when, whatever the case might be, even when you're, hey, we get into it, we're not seeing eye to eye, we're not on the same page,
just
words
like
are thrown here and there, just like, it happens on occasion. And even in those moments, if I'm vowing to worship you, right, in the appropriate way.
Or adore you.
Or adore you, right.
Yeah.
See, the word has this.
Yeah, it has,
and
I don't know,
that's why
I
it was
can't.
removed.
Yeah.
Because it's one that just
they
carries so
just,
much weight.
Replaced it with adore.
Right. And I think
that
would suffice. But I think that's the heart behind it. And again, it just speaks to the intentionality to really value this person that you're coming into commitment with.
And I also know, like, back then, women were not really considered as much.
That's what I'm saying.
Like, I think even there's some parts in the Bible where, not even some parts, but there are times where there's a crowd and women weren't counted amongst the number of people that were present. Right. So I think it really says something that in a time like that where you're not allowed to buy land, you're not allowed to do anything, you're not allowed to, that the wedding vows would say for the man to adore and worship his wife. I think it just goes to show that, like, even if the world out there doesn't necessarily hold you up to a standard, your husband is supposed to vow to hold you up to that standard for the rest of his life. And I think that's cute, because with that, why wouldn't a woman submit? I mean,
if that's the atmosphere that's being created, if that's the starting point from the husband to the wife,
I have no problem. So for the bride,
give me subliminal messages of why you having problems. Kidding.
Anyway, the bride, it would be I, Ella, take thee, David, to be my wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish and to obey till death do us part, according to God's holy ordinance. I thereto give my troth.
All right. So now with this one, the word obey.
Was taken out.
Has been removed.
Cherish too. I don't see cherish usually, but I mean, I guess that's kind of like.
I think some versions might use cherish or a synonym of that. But obey was, and we researched this and found that obey was actually taken out
in 1922.
Exactly. Now, why do you think that was? And do you agree?
Well, okay, because I think in the same way worship is kind of harsh, obey is kind of harsh. Like, if any of you guys watched 90 Day Fiancé, when Angela and Michael got married.
To love and to obey.
Obey what?
To love.
And obey who?
And I guess in Nigeria they still say obey.
That's right. No, that's true.
Yes, I guess they still say, because she's like, obey what? But it's kind of harsh. Like, I feel like submit, it makes more sense to me. I'm more comfortable. It really is, just because I'm more comfortable saying submit, again, with the groom also vowing to adore and worship submission, I'm cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think you bring up a really important point there. And I see here that the groom starts it. And I don't
Exactly.
think that's by accident.
That's true.
Because you are the initiator. And that's scriptural as well. We see in Ephesians that, Paul speaks and is talking to all husbands, and he says, love your wives as Christ loved the church. And we all know that Christ initiated his love display towards the church before we could even have the capacity to respond. And the church representing the bride, you can only respond when I've initiated that love as the groom and as your husband. So
yeah, exacto mundo. Even with submission, I just want to say something.
Oh boy.
Because the truth of the matter is, I think there's two sides to the reason why submission has been, blown out of proportion to be like this, like you're being belittled or you're being, whatever. The truth of the matter is, men have abused the word submission, and have used that word to abuse physically, emotionally, financially,
manipulate.
yes, to do a whole bunch of just garbage, right? Which obviously isn't Christ-like. Or Christ does not manipulate or abuse his church or his bride, huh? So, error. But I will say that I think that what we're dealing with here is an age or an era where women are fed up from years of like, all right, submit, and there hasn't been accountability from men to do what is needed to make sure that you're creating an environment where submission comes naturally. Because the truth of the matter is, like, I don't want to necessarily say that submission comes easily, but it is easier to do so when you know that the person that you are with, or the man that you are with, is someone that has your best interest at heart, someone that loves you, someone that cares for you, someone that puts you above himself. Then there's this like servanthood thing going on where I'm putting you above myself, you're putting me above yourself. I mean, everybody's happy. Right. Literally, everybody's happy. There's no issues here. Right. But if I'm putting you above myself, and then you're putting you above me and everybody else, and then I'm just sitting here like a little dog, then that is when, it becomes shaky. And what you were saying, the bride responds, or the woman responds, right? So with that, I just want to make it very clear, like, whether or not men abuse submission or not, submission is still right because God says so. And so our job is to make sure that we don't say yes to a man because we just want to get married. Or say yes to a man because it's time, or say yes to a man because everything else is right, but then there's some things that, like, there's some issues here and there, because those little issues here or there could be a very big part of why it's going to be difficult for you to submit to him. Right. So for better or worse, the worst could be intolerable with someone that isn't who hasn't shown that he's capable of adoring you and of loving you to the point where he will lay down his life just as Christ. Like, if he doesn't show that, then why would you go and vow to forsake all of this for him? To, for better, for worse, it's just until death do you part. Why would you make that type of vow to someone that you can't submit to? So, I mean, I don't know. Like, I personally feel like if you're with a man that you cannot submit to, for me, that just says more about you than it does about the man. Honestly, because I just kind of feel like, did you not see the signs? Like, when you then no, there are times, let me just put a disclaimer out there for myself. There are times when someone can hide their true colors. But I'm talking about when you know that this person has not shown that they are selfless, that that their love isn't based on condition, that okay, I will only be good to you, I'll only be sweet to you when I need this or when I need that, or when it's convenient for me. But even when it's not convenient for him, like, is he able to inconvenience himself? Is he able to lay down his? Because I personally know, I really feel like marriage, all of it, the weight is on the man more than it is on the woman. We've just taught it wrong and made it seem as if the marriage is all about the woman, you know, being celebrated and, oh my gosh, blah blah blah. Like, we've made it all about that we actually don't realize that when you think about the bride, the church, and then Jesus, the bridegroom, who does more work? We're the one that the groom is the one that beautifies his wife. You know. So it's just interesting. What do you think about that?
No, I think it's spot on. I think the governing question that oftentimes is silent for women in particular who are maybe courting and are considering partners for as potential husbands. The guiding question, like the governing question, ought to be: is this someone who I can submit to? Is this someone who God has given me the grace to submit to? But on the flip side, for the gentleman, and I don't think we ever, like, I don't think we're taught or reminded to ask this: is this someone who I've been given the grace to love?
Right.
No matter what she's throwing at me, no matter how she's coming at me, right? Is this someone who I'm committing myself to love day in and day out, no matter how hard, no matter how inconvenient it is, no matter how much it rubs my ego wrong? No matter
am I willing to die to myself?
Am I willing to die to myself? I was literally going to use the image. Am I willing to become a rug on the mat in certain situations? If that's what it takes to extend love to this person, because that's what I'm committing before God and before loved ones to do.
Right.
And if I see myself as not being able to do that, or not being able to commit to the journey of learning to do that and staying in that journey no matter what comes our way, then I'm wasting someone's time. I'm wasting someone's daughter's time.
You're wasting your own time too.
Right. And so I think that, that's a big lesson that I pull from what you shared, that needs to be the governing question, because that truly is what's being asked of both parties. That's the hallmark, the essence of what's being asked. And I think the word love, like, that's what the man does. I think that word has been so overused. We don't realize what that means. That's so true. And so we compare love and submission, and oftentimes it's like, wait, why do women
all you gotta do is love?
But then when we're using Christ
as the standard,
love, that has a whole new meaning. We're talking about way more than flowers.
Yes.
Like, that's important, right? But we're talking about
that's the bare minimum
to yourself for the betterment of another, day in and day out, no matter what's coming from the other person. Because remember how we treated God when He came after us. The Bible says when we were yet sinners,
that's what
He came and He died for us. So it wasn't that He saw the potential and then came. So it's not that I see, oh, you're kind to me, so now I'm going to be nice to you, I'm going to love you today. But even when you are slandering my name as my wife, I made the commitment to love you and to trust God that my love is going to love that out of you. And if it doesn't, so be it. Because that's the commitment that I'm making. And I think that sometimes we throw that word love, and so we say those verses and we say those scriptures, but we don't really take the time to understand what are we actually committing to, and what has God called us to. And anything He calls us to, He enables us to accomplish it. So what have we not utilized? What accesses have we not taken advantage of to be able to do this seemingly impossible thing that God makes possible by His power?
Right. So we talked about how they changed all of that, right? So obey is out.
The evolution.
Everything, all that is out. But at that time also, the wife, the bride was the one that would get a ring. So the groom would then give the bride the ring, and then say, with this ring I thee wed, with my body I worship thee. There you go again with the worship.
Yeah. So that's also changed.
Yeah, it will, and it gets even better.
Oh, wow.
And with all my worldly goods I endow thee.
Oh, that's what you mean by better.
In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost.
Yeah, you're silly.
No, I just like, yes. But again, I think that even in this could even get abused, right? From both ends. It could be abused by the woman and also be abused by the man. Now for the man, I know that like growing up, my mom would always tell me how like my great-grandma, my great-great-grandmother would kind of endure certain things just because she was being taken care of. You know?
Right.
So taking care of
Like
what?
Shelter.
Yeah, shelter, financially. You know, you have everything you want or whatever. So if I'm a little disrespectful here and there, well, what's the big deal?
Yeah.
If I do this or this or that, what's the big deal?
Right.
If I'm talking to a girl, what's the big deal? Like, you know, it's kind of like you constantly had to weigh disrespect and shelter and being taken care of, you know? And yeah, I think that's tough, but I do love the heart behind this. The man really does a lot of work. The man really does a lot of work.
Thank you for understanding.
No, well, that was the original design. But here we are today in 2021.
Was that?
The original design was literally for the man to do all this work to really kind of like replicate or mimic what Jesus Christ does for the church.
Right.
Yeah, and again, even with that, back to the Quaker vows, you need divine help.
Yeah.
You need divine assistance because it's not natural for a man or a woman to love in that capacity.
Right.
I was actually, there's a study that I saw that basically said that, like, you know, like passionate love or like that, like, oh my God, I'm so in love with you, you're so amazing. Love. Yeah, like it's kind of like someone being on a high. So it's actually, it's biologically impossible to stay on such a high where you're just crazy, madly, and passionately in love with this person every day. Oh my God, you are the wind beneath my wings. You are the like. It's actually biologically impossible for us to stay that way consistently. You know. Yeah. So it has to take commitment and it has to take humility, and you need the help of God to be able to do that for years and years and years. Because naturally in your own flesh, the way we're even wired, which makes me even question God, like, God, so like why didn't you wire us in a way where it would be easy? But if it was easy, then we wouldn't need the help of God in our marriage. Then the covenant would just be between two people. It wouldn't include God at all because we don't need his help, huh?
And I love the point about just one, being on that high, that romantic high is actually detrimental to your body.
It is.
That's
like it's actually, it's like a drug.
It's like the high of a drug that you know, that destroys you. And it's not realistic to expect that to be the engine behind commitment. It can't be, right? Because there are going to be days when you don't feel that way. You may not feel that way about your partner. And that's not an excuse to bow out of the commitment. It's the furthest thing from the excuse. Yeah. And I think for men, in particular, when we talk about that high, or when we talk about those natural tendencies, for men it's easy to become too familiar with something, right? There's a certain value that we attribute to new things, and when familiarity kicks in, the same person, the same way of living together, like men can easily get bored. And
I was about to say, is that what you're saying?
Right, and that's a part of the natural mammal part of us that needs to die on a daily basis when we're entering into this commitment. And I love what Paul says, that I beat my body daily, and that's the commitment we're entering into. That we're saying we're intentionally going to die to this part of ourselves. so that the Spirit of God can empower us
Mm-hmm.
to love this person, even though we may not romantically feel like it in the moment. Because again, if we're looking at Christ as standard, we do not always give him reason to love us.
Ooh.
We do far from that. And that does not stop his reckless love from coming our way. And again, if he's our frame of reference, then there's absolutely no excuse for not continuously and consistently loving your wife. But it's going to take him.
Yeah.
It's going to take him to do it. Him involved.
Yeah.
Him involved, and him being the governing authority, and that means we have to submit to him.
Yeah, which is
Yeah.
hard. So the current vow is I, whoever you are, take you, whoever they are, to be my wedded, I'm gonna just say spouse,
Right.
to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish. Oh, cherish is still there. Till death do us part, according to God's holy will. And I pledge to you my faithfulness. Amen. And you don't say amen at the end, but the crowd usually does.
Yeah, no, I mean that's a prayer.
Yeah.
That's a prayer.
It basically is a prayer. And you were saying how you think that like we should like
Oh, absolutely.
frame.
Yeah, because I think this is like a vision statement, and it's a contract, obviously, that's being made, and
It's like a contract, but it's not really.
in what way? Well, how is
Because
it not really?
when you enter a contract,
Right.
right? A contract is you do this,
I see what you're saying.
I do this.
Yeah. So in that way,
this is my expectation, this is your
Right.
expectation. You sign here, I sign here. This will get broken. This
Then-
contract is ripped up
Right.
when you don't meet my expectations.
no, you're right.
However, in marriage, because it is a covenant,
Mm.
even when you do wrong,
Right.
I have to go and ask God for grace.
Right.
Even when you don't meet my expectations, I have to now pray for you.
Right.
And I have to now ask God for strategy on how do I approach this situation? How do I figure out how we go about this? Yeah, because if it is a contract, then we would have gotten divorced during the honeymoon when you got on my nerves.
Wow. Well, you got on my nerves before we even got to the honeymoon.
That's not
But
true. I really didn't.
That's just for the
I
record
did not. What did I
anyways.
do?
I mean, honestly, it's so long ago
Okay.
at this point. I just
Because
put
I
it to
remember
bed.
what you did.
I had to put it to bed so that we
Okay.
can keep going. That's
Okay.
So you see what I'm saying?
That's fine.
Wait, so you kept it in your mind? You still,
I don't have to keep things in my mind.
Okay,
they
cool.
they just happen to just live there.
Wait, so you need to get anything?
No,
off
I
your
don't have to
chest?
get anything. I'm just trying to
Okay.
say that if it was a contract,
Okay.
that meeting expectations.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying to you too. If it was.
Anyway.
But nah, all
Yeah.
jokes aside, no, you're spot on. That it's definitely deeper than a contract.
Yeah.
Because there isn't that easy route of bowing out just because the other person doesn't commit.
Yeah. And in a contract, you don't have to die to yourself.
Yeah.
In a contract, if I want to do whatever I want to do, I'm going to do it.
Right.
Whereas in a marriage, I gave up my right to do whatever I want to do
Right.
when I made those vows.
Yeah, and to that point, I think that the vows should be something. The vows and the certificate should be something that's you have a memorial of that.
Mhm.
Whether that's framing it somewhere where you see it every day, where you're reminded of this commitment that you've made. But I think it's sad that the marriage certificate doesn't come out until it's time to discuss a divorce or whatever, or the
Mhm.
contract is not
Mhm.
thought about
Mhm,
until
mhm.
that time.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that, again, we should be seeing every day. We should be reminding ourselves of every day, and that we should hold up and see somehow so that we can live our lives to committing to accomplishing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Amen to
But
that.
now you had a point about coming to the altar or the marriage ceremony being like a funeral.
Oh my God!
And I
Yes.
thought that was
Yes.
quite
Yes. So let me explain why. Let me explain why. So I think that you know, I've been going to weddings my whole life, been in weddings my whole life. And I always saw a wedding ceremony as just like this beautiful celebration. Everybody just gets dressed really nice. Like,
Right.
you know, everybody put on your best fit, the food, music. Like, weddings are just the best. But I don't think we realize that, like, this is also a funeral service. Like,
Yeah.
it's also a celebration of the death of your individuality, the death of the single you. And you even see it throughout the ceremony. So okay, when you walk into the sanctuary, or you walk into wherever you get married at, but we're just going to use sanctuary in this example. So let's say you walk into the sanctuary, right? As you walk in, when I walked in, my name was Emanuela Tando, as my grandpa walked me down the aisle. And I was just me, right? But as he walked me down the aisle and I met you at the altar, you too, you were just you as a single person, as you've been your whole entire life.
Just bachelor.
Okay.
Yeah. My text song.
Okay.
Hey, Shane. Well, go ahead.
Anyway, so then we got to the altar. By the time we left the altar, I was no longer that person that I walked down the aisles. And you were no longer that person that I met at the end of the aisle. We were no longer the same people. We walked to the altar, one person, and then we walked away from the altar. Now, not even just as two individuals, but now we're one. So that means that there was a sacrifice that happened during the time of the vows. There was, through the exchange of the vows and through the whole entire ceremony, there was a sacrifice. There was a change in identity, and we also see that with the Abrahamic covenant, where God makes a covenant with Abraham, which we're gonna get into, but it's coming out. God made a covenant with Abraham, and then after he makes the covenant, he changes their name. So then their identity changes. So Abram goes from Abram to Abraham, Sarai to Sarah. And so Abram was noble father. He went from noble father to father of nations. And then Sarah went from princess to now princess of nations. So I think that it's just, you should not expect to go through such a ceremony. You should not expect to go and make such a covenant before God at an altar and think that you did all of that and now you're the same person. Right. I remember with me, after we got married, I tried so hard to like still be who I've always been, you know? Yeah. Like whether it's a family, friends, whatever, and I was suffering. Like it was just exhausting because I'm like, no, this, and it's like you don't feel it right there and then. You don't feel the change right there and then. Yeah. But it's like some type of like progressive thing.
High is still,
yeah, the highs. Everybody's all up in your face. Oh, we love you, we love you, we love you. Never hear from them again. We love you, we love you, we love you, we love you. Right. Yeah. So you don't really feel that until like during the marriage, and you're just like, I just feel so different, and it's not even like a. It's like I need to figure out what's going on mentally and emotionally because there's been a shift. I mean, I think that's something that's not, you know, taught or exposed at all. You're just kind of like, oh yeah, you get married, go have sex, go have kids, you know, enjoy life. Yes, all that is there, but that wedding ceremony is also a celebration of you giving up who you were for this new identity and for this new responsibility that you're taking on.
Right. Now, if I could play devil's advocate.
Oh, God.
No?
Go ahead.
For the person who's like, wait, what do you mean my individuality is done, is sacrificed? Am I no longer allowed to be me? Like all the things that make me who I am, the things that are important to me, does that just go into the grave? What do you say to that person? Like, how do you navigate that? Because I know, I don't think you're saying that all of that is now
No.
gone.
Yeah.
But yeah, so if you could just elaborate on it.
Yeah, so the truth of the matter is we still like the things that, like, we're still very different, right? Although we're one flesh, we're still very different. And that still doesn't take away from the fact that every single day I have to die to myself. Now, when I was an individual, I would die to myself for my own personal reasons. So things that I struggled with, I would die to myself for. But now I have to die to myself for things that low key, like, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have to. You get what I'm saying? So you now have to, you now go from this individual where everything is just kind of like, okay, I know my triggers, I know my this, I know my this, I know my that, I know what I need to stay away from, I know what I need to cut out of my life, I know what blah blah blah, I know what I need to work on. And then out of nowhere, now you're married and now it's like, no, you got more dying to do. As an individual, you don't have to go through that. But when you become one with someone else, where you are no longer, you're not an individual when you get married. You're just not. You're no. And I'm sorry. I know it's just like, controversial, but it's the truth. Like, yes, you are a single human being, but according to God's design, we are one flesh. Yeah.
Nah, spot on. I think that's so important, and it's sometimes hard to hear, right? Because we want to maintain self. We want to maintain those things that bring us all the pleasure in the world that we've enjoyed for so long. But when you do enter into marriage, you are making a commitment to sacrifice, right? And so in my individuality or in my singleness, I woke up when I wanted to. Like, it was any decision that I make, it's my way. There was no other thought of another person's well-being. You know, now we have a beautiful baby girl in the picture. My alarm is not set by just me. My alarm takes into consideration those night feedings. My alarm takes into consideration who's on duty, on baby duty, because whoever's on baby duty gets, or whoever's not on baby duty is on breakfast duty, right? And so it takes into all these things into consideration, and gone are those days where, okay, work starts at this time, so I'll just wake up 30 minutes before, and that's done. Because now I even gotta fit my time with Jesus in there.
Exactly.
Right? And so that individuality
is gone.
So to speak, is
gone.
It's a dead story.
It's gone. Yeah. And like, even something as simple as, like, I always laugh with my friends. Like, I remember when I was living by myself, when I was in Philly, like, there were nights where I would have sleep for dinner. Like, I would come home from work and I'm just like, I don't feel like cooking. I'm just gonna go to sleep and just wake up and go get breakfast from, like, wherever. I cannot do that no more.
Calling your mom so
I can't come and starve somebody's son. It's just, you know, I just can't do that. You know, and so I think that, you just die to all of that, and it's a constant sacrificial lifestyle that you live. And one thing, you know, whenever people hear people married couples talk about marriage this way, they're like, oh, you guys are being so negative. Just saying that marriage is work is not to say that it's any less beautiful. In fact, it just shows the beauty of it, that it's all of this work and you guys are still choosing to do it anyway. You know, it's all of this work, but, you know, there's still joy and happiness and fun. Like, that's because of just how marriage just is. Like, it's a lot of work and it's a lot of fun and it's a lot of this and it's a lot of that and it's a lot of everything.
What's so important about, I mean, I think anything but marriage in particular, is this is a blessing from God, and it's a responsibility from Him. And in order to fully enjoy the blessing, you have to participate in the responsibility and be responsible for sustaining this thing, this union, this commitment. And And I don't need to teach you to enjoy the blessing. Like that's default. When you enter in, you're gonna enjoy it.
Yeah, you're gonna enjoy it.
But
You know what to do.
handle the responsibility, that takes work. That's gonna take intentionality. To enjoy it, that's gonna come. So we don't have to talk about that. But obviously, we share in all those things. But I think an emphasis on the responsibility is something that will create more sustaining and healthier relationships. So I hope that folks who feel like, oh man, this is a Debbie Down, that's not what this is. But we want to emphasize the responsibility so that the beauty and the blessing can last a lifetime for every individual coming into this union.
So that you're not going into it thinking that you're about to have a lifetime party. Like it's not a lifetime party. Right. Life is life, okay? So like there's of course there's joy in everything, but it's work. Right. It's work, and it's a blessed responsibility that we get to have. So in the wedding vows, we say, I take you. I take you. And I was saying, and you could go more into this, but I was saying that it's interesting that we say, I take you. So then that shows that connects to the leaving and cleaving, that how we're supposed to leave our family and cleave to this person that we are marrying.
And both parties are doing the leaving and the cleaving. And the groom is saying this. So I take you. It's a personal, subjective.
That I chose
not
you.
Not we.
Yeah.
Even when it's arranged.
Yeah,
it was arranged, and we came here together, and we're standing in front of each other together, but I'm taking you as me. Individually. And so the responsibility of maintaining this is on me, not on anyone else. And so I love that vibe, because it's, again, pointing to leaving and saying, I'm cleaving to this person. And then, specifically when you're thinking about the groom saying this to the bride, I'm taking you, you know what I'm saying?
Literally.
So that system that you were once part of, we're escaping that and creating our own home, our own traditions and all of that, our own household. So I love the intentionality behind these words here, and I think, time to reflect on them is beneficial.
And I think what I also love about take is that it's not that I'm marrying you because God forced me to. Or I'm marrying you because there's a lot of that going on. And let's just be very clear. The last time God gave somebody to marry somebody was Adam and Eve. It has not happened again. Why? Because when Adam got in trouble, his first response was, is the woman that you gave me. Right. So after that, we did not see again that God bring this person and come bring this person, and then you come and stand together and be married. It did not happen again. So from there on forward, everybody, you have free choice. Go and pick whoever you want. Go and marry not whoever. Have common sense, obviously. But you make the choice. So that's what that's what I thought of when I saw take, as I made the decision, with prayer, with observation, with studying you, with actually making an assessment. Does our life even make sense together? Where we want to be in the next 15, 10, 5 years. Right. Does it make sense for me to be joined as one flesh to you? Yeah. So I like that.
That's huge. I think though with Adam, right? I think he did use choice. Even though obviously she was presented and he woke up to her. When God first said it's not good for man to be alone, he brought him animals. And he didn't say anything about I take these or for this reason.
But he knew though. You think that Adam would look at an elephant and be like, yeah, like,
hey,
no.
Of course not. But he understood that this wasn't the kind of helper that he would be joined with and linked with. Now, when God put Eve on the scene, he didn't say, that's nice. I wonder if God's going to, provide any others. Like that. Okay, cool. I see I like what I'm seeing here. It's definitely an upgrade from all the elephants and the lions that are around. But he was determined. And he said boldly, for this reason, he said he named her, and then goes on to say, this is bone of my bone. This is flesh of my flesh. And I think there's an aspect of choice there, but where Adam faltered was in maintaining responsibility. And so when push comes to shove, right, when ish hits the fan, he's like, oh God, it's that person you gave me. Forgetting that this is also the person that I took, which means I'm responsible and I'm accountable for what happens, because you actually gave me the instruction first and foremost and gave me the responsibility to pass it on and to ensure that there's order and everything goes the way you planned it to.
Yeah.
So I think that's where he messed. I think he took, but forgot that he took.
He was given a helper though. Was she not a help? Like, it wasn't like that this is the helper?
Right. Yeah.
So you're saying that he could have waited for...
Yeah, he could have waited for another one. I mean, because the animals I imagine didn't come, came in multiplicity, right? So seeing one of his kind, maybe he could have thought, oh, maybe another one come.
Okay. So, I think, did they say that and they knew each other?
Yeah.
Okay, so, bada boom, bada bing.
Right.
So, yeah. Even talking about him and responsibility, right? I want to talk about the for better, for worse. Right. Because I feel like that's something that we say, for better or for worse. And then it's just kind of like, oh, yeah. Like, that's cool. I get that. I don't think we get it.
Yeah.
Because even with Adam and Eve, we saw in the better, as soon as he saw her, it was straight up poetry.
Yeah, that was better. Yeah.
Poetry. Oh my goodness. She's bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. It's just like, just... And then what happened? Next thing you know, they knew each other. Right. They got intimate or whatever. Right. So that was the for better. Now when the serpent came in, the serpent now came in on an assignment. And I think that that's even something that we have to look at. That in Genesis, when we're first introduced to the enemy in the form of a serpent, we're introduced to him when he is trying to cause confusion in the covenant between a man and a woman.
Right.
So it's just very clear that he does not like marriage.
Yeah.
Right? What God says is good,
he wants to corrupt.
Exactly. So now God, seeing this as good, he now enters in and wants to cause confusion and division, which is basically, what he did. Because Adam, one moment, bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. Next minute, God, this woman that you gave me. Yeah. How did I go from bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh to this woman?
Right. No, it's sad.
This
it's
woman,
like, on one hand, when better was happening, it's like,
he didn't even say Eve. He said this woman.
Right, that's crazy. I never even thought about it like that.
Oh my goodness!
In that moment for him, there was such a separation from her.
Division.
It was like, yo, that's the one you want to talk to. Like, she's the one who messed up. I didn't have anything to do with that. And that's definitely not what God intended.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that the serpent comes to Eve. And God comes to Adam, right? Which talks about the order there, that the serpent knew exactly what he was doing when he came to Eve first. Yeah. Because he wanted to disrupt that order.
Out of order.
And God, even in his reprimanding them, reminds us of what his order is. That, yo, man, you're responsible. So when I'm noticing there's an issue here, there's a disruption in this dominion that I've given you, I'm coming to you. Yeah. I'm knocking on your door and I'm asking for, where's the man in this house? Yeah. Like, why is there disorder? You're responsible for this. You're held accountable for this. So yeah, right on. The serpent came and he had one thing in mind: confuse, corrupt, destroy, deceive, whatever it takes. Yeah.
And it's a shame. It's a shame because I think that day in and day out, there are different serpents that will try to come into the marriage that you have to be on the lookout for. And I think that even with Adam, it's just a message to husbands everywhere. Yeah. If you see that a serpent approaches your wife, hello, hi, like grab your wife and go. Like, why are you allowing the serpent to be talking to your wife and you anyhow asking her to question what God has said and blah blah blah? Like, I think that it's a message to husbands to, like, you know, protect your wife.
And to do so spiritually as well.
Yeah, exactly. Even on the spiritual
his
side.
His deception was about what God said to her. And actually what God
said to Adam
to say to her. And so he was directly responsible for what she knew. And clearly he had some good conversations with her because she clapped back.
Yeah.
He said, wait a minute, actually this is what God said. But again, as you're mentioning, you have to sustain that responsibility. It's not just one moment and then you're going with the flow. But yeah.
So what are some, like, for worse things, or what are some serpents, I guess, that we should always be on the lookout for?
I think one, obviously family, friends are individuals and folks that we would hope in our prayers that they would be supportive and that they would be helpful and also know when to provide the necessary distance. But I think sometimes even with family and friends, folks can be under the influence of the serpent and come through in ways that create division or cause one person to look at the other person a certain way that goes against the value system and the honor and the love and the submission that God calls the two people to.
Yeah.
And so I think whenever folks are coming with these messages, these negative messages about your partner, and you're internalizing them, or you're just hearing them maybe out of respect for that person, maybe an older person, whatever the case might be. I think that's one example that oftentimes happens. I think miscommunication. I think just different things that create hiccups in the unity when they're not dealt with.
Yeah.
Right? And when they're just left at bay. And I think particularly when the man doesn't do his role and when the husband doesn't take on the responsibility to address and put out fires, the moment he notices it, you have an Adam and Eve situation with the serpent where they're having this conversation and we come to find out that Adam was with Eve
the whole
and
time.
eats the fruit along with her. And so we don't know, I mean, it's not completely clear how much he heard, but he was with her throughout that time.
Yeah, he was there.
And as a bystander, because he comes up with no interruption, he has no intervention,
Nothing.
Doesn't even have communication with her when she brings the fruit to him. And so I think, I say all that to say that as a husband and as a man, it's so important to notice these things and put them out immediately, and to do so in partnership. Right? Because here's the reality. I don't have all the wisdom that's required for us to progress and to be successful. You have a major part of that wisdom. In certain cases, you have more than I do. Right? I don't have all the spiritual sensitivity that's needed to know exactly where God is guiding us. In some instances, there are things you pick up on that I don't.
Absolutely.
And so if we're not in communion and we're not unified, that disunity becomes our destruction. What's up?
When you said unified, I just peeped something.
What? Oh boy, bars. Go ahead.
No. Okay.
Don't scare me like something happened.
No, okay. This just came to me, so I may not have all my words together, but just flow with me real quick.
I'm gonna give them the bars.
Okay, no, because so you know how Christ loves, Christ's bride is the church, so it's the body, right? Just as so Christ is the head, the bride is the body, just as Adam was the head, Eve the body.
Right.
Satan attacked the body. That's why he attacked Eve. You get it?
Yeah.
You get it? That's really crazy. No, because for me it's just kind of like the reason why he didn't attack the head was because when he attacks the body, he covers more ground.
Right.
So even in the same way, even now, even within the church or whatever, he attacks the body. Satan doesn't go and attack God. Is he stupid? He attacks the
Right.
church, which is the body, which is
Right.
the bride, and so it makes sense why he even, went that route.
Right.
Also making sure that he causes out of order nonsense, blah blah blah. But Adam was right there.
Right.
Why didn't he go for the head? He saw the head, he saw the body, but he went for the body. I don't know. I feel like there's something there.
Now we'll have to unpack that some more.
there's
But no,
something
that's
there.
good.
Yeah.
That's
Somebody needs to go and catch it. Yeah, going down from there, for richer, for poorer. Finances high, finances low. I think the truth of the matter is, for richer, for poorer, sickness and in health, love, cherish, till death do us part. I think for every couple, even as an individual, even if you're not in a relationship, making sure that you, as an individual, define what is for worse, what is better, like what is for worse.
Prior to going
to going
like
in.
Your boundary line.
Yeah, like what is for worse? Because someone for worse could be adultery.
Mm-hmm.
For me, that's not for worse. For me, that's exit. I'm out. Period.
Message heard loud and clear.
Period. like I wouldn't even say anything. And I've told you before, the day I find out that David has oh my god, the day. No, it won't happen. It won't happen. But I told you that if the devil, if you ever,
Fine guy like
I wouldn't even say Pim. I would just be like, I already warned you, so no conversation here.
Right.
But no, yeah. So someone's for better or for worse,
Right.
is this or that. But I think it's just important for couples to just like sit down and define like what is it. Like, don't just go into marriage thinking everything's gonna be all nicey, bubbly.
Right.
Oh, for worse. Oh, we're not even gonna worry about it. I love you, you love me, so bad isn't going to be that bad. No, bad is bad. But what is your bad?
Right.
What is your for worse? Let's figure this thing out. And not even saying that we're gonna discuss an exit plan, but just making sure that we communicate and we express to each other that when I'm saying these vows, this is what I mean. Because, imagine, these vows have been recited by so many different people all over the world for years, decades, centuries, and everyone reciting it, it can't mean the same to all of us.
Yeah.
So what do these vows mean to us?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that conversation is very important for it to happen. And I think it awakens both partners to an understanding about where the other person's non-negotiable is as you're entering. And when it's left unsaid, certain things can be assumed that, oh, you understand that. Yo, if you go this route, that's where this ends.
Right.
And that's where I draw the line in terms of my ability to trust you or whatever the case might be. And when that goes unspoken, again, I think there's this fantasized idea that we have that everything is easy, everything is cool, everything is nice, and temptation's not going to be a problem because we're going to be hitting it, whatever the case might be. But the reality is, no, these trials will come. And is your partner aware of where you're not gonna be okay? And I think having that conversation puts into perspective, again, the weight of the commitment you're walking into.
Yeah.
And for the partner who's hearing, yo, if you cheat on me, that's it. You have to make a decision there. Dang. Am I committing to really be with this person alone?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And oftentimes that's not even spoken of.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, we love each other now. We go
It's
into
never gonna happen.
us for life.
Yeah.
And then, homegirl walk by and it's a different story.
Yeah. Can we actually just real quick discuss the two different times where we see where, divorce is discussed? So Jesus said that adultery, this is in Matthew, but
yes, when he refers back to Moses,
yes,
because the people had heard.
Yes. So in that, Jesus says that adultery is grounds for divorce.
Right.
Right. Now, I think that, you know, for some, adultery isn't. But I want us to just focus on, because I think people will focus more on, oh, so then divorce is okay. And what I'm trying to, what I think the focus should be on is the fact that, like, when you bring adultery is bringing another person into the covenant. Adultery is now you have beaten the covenant. We already talked about how Satan does not, if the Bible says in Malachi that God hates divorce. So if God hates divorce, who loves divorce? The devil. So therefore, you are joining the enemy in destroying this covenant. When you bring in another person, the covenant was with 3. You now added 4 or 5 or 6 or 7. You know, you've dishonored the covenant, and so I think that's where that stems from.
Yeah.
The fact that the covenant was not honored, you broke the covenant.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to also the command to keep the marriage bed undefiled. Because in verbatim, in Matthew 19:9, it says, I say to you, whoever divorces his wife except for sexual immorality, right? And so it's specifically defiling the marital bed that is the grounds for divorce, without it being, for the person who's divorcing the other person, without it being attributed to them as adultery themselves.
Yeah.
Because anything else, it's, you don't have grounds to do this, because
Yeah.
you made a commitment to be with this person who's changing, who's not perfect, whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, 100%, you're adding to this three-knotted cord, this three-knotted strand that was supposed to only be between you, your partner, and God.
Yeah. So we're gonna get into covenants, because we've been talking a lot about marriage being a covenant, and I think it's just important to just clearly just show the heart of God in covenants.
Yeah.
So when you look throughout the Bible, covenants are actually the backbone in the Bible.
Right.
I realized that when you look at those covenants were started. So let's say with Abraham, it started with God and Abraham, and then it stretched out to so many people.
Right.
Like the descendant, and when you look at even with David, the covenant was made between God and David, but did it only affect David and then leave everyone else? No, even after he died, it affected his family and those who followed after him. So is there anything that you want to share about that as well?
Yeah, that it transcends the individuals who are making it.
Yeah.
And that's the beautiful thing about God's magnificence, that oftentimes he establishes covenant because he has generational impact in mind, and generational blessing to establish. And so I think even when we look at marriage, it's not just about the two parties who are enjoying the marriage, who are making the union and who are making that agreement, but the lives of the children who will grow up in that household, the lives of all of those who will be influenced by that marital union, those who will look to that marital union as an example, and in the picture of the marriage will see the love of God demonstrated. You see what I'm saying? Like, for some people, they may never go to church, they may never pick up a Bible, but your marriage can be their gospel, where they're seeing the love of Christ demonstrated from husband to wife, and this loving and trustful submission, which is the body of Christ responding back to Christ in the person of the wife. And so this is so much bigger than the two people who are making that covenant, and that's oftentimes how God operates, which is a beautiful thing that he invites us to be a part of.
Yeah. And so I think that even looking at covenants, we within a covenant this is why I rather just focus on how marriage is a covenant instead of just looking at it as like a romantic relationship alone. Because yes, it's a romantic relationship. I think that's a very important part of marriage. But it being a covenant is what really grounds
Yeah.
me whenever my flesh wants to act up. It's like, no, this is a covenant.
Right.
And this covenant is not just for David and Ella,
Right.
but generations to come. And when you think about it that way, it's like, I mean, anger, frustration, attitudes, whatever. The covenant takes priority over that. And if there's anything that we want you to take from this, is when it comes to the covenant, it has to take priority over your selfish desires, over what you want. Some desires aren't even selfish, like peace of mind.
No.
It's not selfish, but there will be some times where you'll have to not sacrifice your peace, but have to sacrifice you being able to just live in a bubble and just, be in your, and just, just you, everybody else can be crazy. You just do your own thing. Yeah. You have to sacrifice that and jump in and, hands in and just do whatever work needs to be done. Because there's a long-term effect here that goes way beyond, you and I.
And I think sometimes we also downplay the impact of the observations that children are having in a household, right? How the way that love is demonstrated becomes the frame of reference for so many things as a child grows up. Not only their relationship with God, which is supreme, but their relationship and their interaction with the world, how they feel, people look at them, how they respond, right? Just, it sets the foundation for that. And when children see love and receive love, right, from people who are not just mother and father, but who are husband and wife and mother and father, it's such an ideal, atmosphere and model for just great people who are,
It reminds me of our daughter. Like, when she sees us hug, she wants to join in.
Oh, it's
like, she wants it to be like a family. And she's like, hey, what do you guys doing?
No matter what she's watching or doing, she'll come over. What's going on here? Why am I not part of it?
I want to be a part of this too. Yeah. So I think it's a culture that you want to maintain. Yeah. It's one of those things that you want things like this to run in your family. You know how like people say things like, oh, like when it comes to this illness, this runs in my family. Like sacrificial love should run in your family. And that starts with us making that decision. Yeah.
And I think the next thing to really hone in is, what is our part in honoring the covenant? Like, what do we do? And I think one of the things we talked about earlier is not seeing it as contractual, as a contract, which limits my part to what you do. Right?
No contractual behavior. Condition.
I love you if you submit. Like, it's not that way. And so, and getting out of that mindset, because that's kind of how we operate in this world. That's what we see in kind of all transactions, business transactions, and all these other things. It requires divine assistance. And so, being very intentional about making the decision every day that I would love for you to respond favorably. Yeah. But that's not gonna be what I depend or I rely on to make the decision to do my duty as your husband. You see what I'm saying? My duty as your husband is a commitment that I'm making no matter what you do back to me. And when that posture and that attitude is adopted, that marriage becomes dangerous. And I think it's almost inevitable for you not to eventually respond, even if you might be having a hard time, or vice versa. And I think that posture and that attitude is something that the enemy wants to take away, to make it contractual, because what ends up happening then, the condition of the other person is never satisfied. So then the person who's waiting for that condition never does their part. Guess what happens? The marriage is destroyed. Never goes up, never ever even is built in that kind of mindset and posture. And I think another thing too that's huge is walking in the grace to forgive. Right? You're joining yourself to someone
it's a lifestyle,
who's ever growing.
Yeah.
who is full of surprises, right? Who intentionally and unintentionally may hurt you by their words, by some of the ways that they go about doing things, by some things that they do not do, right? And we have to be able to forgive, in the same way that Christ did for us. Like, imagine if he keeps a list of everything that we do, and everything, in every way that we've gone astray, or every way that we've hurt him, and he maintained that. There would be no way that he'd come for us. So I think those are two things that really stand out for me. I have another one, but you look like you want to jump in.
I really love the quote that says that it is not, so from the day that you make your vow, to one another, now you have to change, like, reform everything, the way that you think. You just change it, throw all the garbage away. It's not marriage, it is not love that maintains your marriage, but it is marriage that maintains your love. And that's just so profound or whatever, because I just feel like it's just, because it just goes to show just how up and down we are as human beings. Like, we're really unstable. Like, when, like, sometimes I'm just like, God, like, I don't know how you, like, deal with us, because we're so unstable. And so love, I mean, I feel like every day you uncover exactly what love is, like, when you're constantly putting yourself in situations where it's like, not in situations, but in a position where I'm uncomfortable, but because I love my family, because I love my spouse, I'm doing this. That's the covenant. That's the covenant that's allowing the love to grow. Love itself is not, I don't know, man. It's the covenant that is fueling the growth of the love. Not necessarily love that is maintaining the marriage, because love did, the way that we humans are. The feeling love, right? The feeling of love. It wavers. But when it comes to the covenant itself, if you allow that to be priority over everything, how you feel, what you don't feel, how your spouse look, how they don't look, whatever, all of that, then that is what will allow love to actually grow in you, and genuine love. And so we can get to that point of that agape love, because agape love is a natural for us.
It's out of this world. I love what you talked about, discomfort, right? And one of the requirements is we need to learn to embrace discomfort. And I think a major part of that is because marriage doesn't work in us, right? In the same way that
while you're working on your marriage,
you're working on the marriage, it's working
on
you as well. And it's exposing some things you would rather not have exposed, right? It's bringing some things to light that you probably didn't even know about, and that you have to now address and look at and say, wait a minute, what's going on here?
And sometimes it can feel as if your spouse is the one that is attacking you. It's the covenant that's working.
That's pulling it out.
That's pulling it out.
Because the God's design for marriage, he's giving this blessing to us as one of the platforms that he uses to make us more like him, to make both parties more like him. And so some things got to get cut off, right? That selfishness got to get cut off.
Circumcised.
You see what I'm saying? And that's uncomfortable. And that being pointed out, whatever gave you comfort, whatever was so convenient for all these years of your life, that until you were now joined to someone else, you haven't had to look at. Like, for example,
you can overlook all of it.
Embracing the discomfort of confrontation. Man, that's not easy for me, but you need that. We need that in this marriage. Otherwise, fires aren't being put out. You see what I'm saying?
You're just in here burning.
And so, for the sake of the covenant, both parties are invested in addressing and allowing those things to be exposed, and then addressing them by the power of God, so that we become more like him. And
Yeah.
We got to be fully in order to enjoy that.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And I think that even also in making sure that we are allowing marriage to do its work on us to practically just see the letter I and realize that I vanished. It went away like mist in the air the moment you said those vows. I think sometimes we say that, oh, it's just I do. It's the vows and the I do. Everything all together is a whole. You just did a whole ceremony to just give up, give up your rights to even ownership of your body. That's a whole nother
another series.
Yeah, a whole nother series. But just plainly putting it out there, like when you said those vows, you vowed to give up ownership of your body. Like that body is not yours. And I know in this cultural climate that we're in, it's kind of like a touchy subject. But then in that, I would just say, then don't get married, because the design of marriage is that once you say those vows and you're under that covenant, I don't own my body. David owns his body. David doesn't own that body. I own that body. And so because of that, you can't enter into marriage saying that, yeah, even though I made those vows, and even though I understand that, you know, in marriage we belong to one another. Why? Because we're one flesh. When you were walking down those aisles, that body belonged to you. But the moment you said those vows and you left that altar, you now became one flesh. So now you gave it up. So I think once we understand that as well, we won't enter into marriage anyhow. You won't just give up ownership to your body to someone who you know is not deserving of it just because.
One of the things that I think we can sometimes forget in the midst of the focus on ourselves is what marriage is supposed to point to. And that for me is a big like take home as we've been reflecting on so many of these conversations. And the take home is that marriage is supposed to reflect Christ and Christ's love for his body. And marriage is a gift that God has given us to perfect us so that we can return to him. The ending of the vows reads, till death do us part, right? And so the goal is to make it to that point so that we can both individually return to our Creator. And we're not returning to him as a couple anymore, but we're returning to him as individuals who are now being joined to him. And this marriage in this lifetime was the practicing ground to begin to enjoy marriage on this side will pale in comparison to the union that we get to experience with our glorious bridegroom on that special day and for eternity. And so the goal of this is to prepare for that. The goal of this is to practice for that. And I think, you know, having that at the forefront of our minds is so essential. And I think it makes us to remember that we have a duty to keep at the forefront here, that it's not about my pleasure, right? And so when it's not comfortable, when it's not convenient, that doesn't matter. That's an add-on that God allows. But on days when it's not there, I don't demand that, because that's not a part of the promise. The promise is I'm being perfected. You're being perfected. We're being prepared to return to him.
Yeah.
And it should be a desire of ours to return to him and to return to him ready for him to have us. You know?
Yeah.
So
yeah, I really love that. And I even on that point, I would say that it's so important to realize that marriage on earth really is a momentary marriage. There's a book that we're reading, Momentary Marriage. And the more and more I just, actually study what marriage is and the purpose of it, it's clear that marriage is to purify us for the marriage that death cannot depart.
Mm.
This momentary marriage is only doing the work for the marriage that marriage that death do its part does not exist.
Mm.
After this flesh goes away, that marriage still exists.
Right.
You know, so that's the point that I think that like just need to keep replaying in my head forever and ever and ever.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge.
For real.
Because it puts everything in perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It puts any miscommunication in perspective.
Yeah.
Like, yo, this is for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that miscommunication, we embrace now
Mm-hmm.
that opportunity to prepare for what's not just going to be the moment.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, and in the moment, that's not easy.
oh, come on,
Yeah.
you throwing bars out now.
Just
But
saying.
no, absolutely. And it requires a consistent mindset of eternity, even in the moment, which is hard.
Yeah, and I think even with that, understanding that when I said my vows to you, and I vowed to you, I didn't just vow to you, David, on that day, June 22nd, 2019. Wow, June. Yes, June 22nd, 2019. We always get mixed up because our courtship anniversary is 24. So whenever I say, I'm just like
getting it wrong anyway.
No, anyway, yes. I didn't just say my vows to you and my devotion and my submission and my cherish, honor you and all that to you, that man that stood before me, but the man that you will become. And that is what's scary, because the man you will become is a man that I haven't met. So I'm making these vows to you and I don't even know who you're going to become. I know you have good intentions. I know your intention is this, that. We've discussed this. We've done our due diligence. But I mean, life, you know? And again, that goes back to Christ. Christ, he even knowing that some of us, we're just not even gonna try. But still, he showed us what he literally said, for better or worse. I lay down my life for you. You know? Yeah, no, if like that's just, it is what it is. And it's just like that Romans 5:8, where it says that God demonstrates his love. That is a demonstration of your love for the person, to say that I actually don't know how you're going to evolve, but I vow to be here by your side as you evolve, you know. And it's scary, and it's also scary because I notice that I have to give you the grace to grow, you know, like I have to give you the grace to become all that God has destined you to be. And it's tough. Because it's like, why can't you just get it together? Why can't you just do this? Why can't you just do that? And the truth of the matter is, I vowed to be here during that process. As you vowed to be here during the process, as God is pruning me and cleaning me and, you know, doing all of that, all of that. And in most cases, he does that a lot through you. You know, like marriage is really, oh man, it's such a part of the healing process. Like, and it's important to note that it's not you that is healing me, but it's God that is doing it through you, you know. So when you say those vows, and ladies, what did I say the other day? Was it just yesterday? When you say yes to the ring, you're not just saying yes to the man and yes to a wedding and yes to companionship, but you're saying, yes, I'm going to submit to the mission. Like submitting to the mission of your life, the mission of our marriage. Like I'm submitting to it, and submitting, sometimes you have to make yourself uncomfortable. You know, so if you can't submit to the mission, don't say yes, because the wedding is very short. You blink, it's over. Like, you know, but the marriage itself is where, you know, you live those vows out. For real. Yeah.
And that's on period.
And that's on period, boo.
Alright.
Yeah, so if we could honestly just wrap everything up, it's just know that marriage is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's enjoyment with responsibilities.
Yeah. And consider the responsibility
Before
walking into that beautiful
thing.
In the same way that Jesus tells his disciples, consider that you have what it takes to build this building before you do the construction, before you start. Otherwise, people are going to look and laugh. And we see that happen, right? Major weddings are happening, and then we find out 2 years in, 2 months in, right? And it becomes this public news, like, look at this. And then we also see
making a mockery of it.
Yeah. And so, we have a responsibility to uphold God's design here and to do it the right way so that it represents him well. And so, consider that cost. Know that he provides every equipment. Take hold of that. Trust him and move forward day in and day out.
Yeah, and he'll give you the grace.
Yeah.
And make sure that you yourself are being intentional
Right.
about the grace that you give. And y'all will be all right. Y'all will be all right.
Yeah.
So we love you, and we pray that this was a blessing to you. We had so much fun doing this.
Yeah.
We could do this for
hours. It's such
hours.
a blessing reflecting on it. And I pray that it's a blessing to all of you as well. So until next time, guys.
Bye, y'all.
Love y'all.